One thing that's important is to decipher the difference between what a nice guy is and what a narcissistic guy is. The nice guy is the one that goes into the attempt of trying to, take the woman out on dates and be nice and pay for things for the woman and try to become the woman's personal bodyguard in life. That's the nice guy boyfriend. And then she's like, oh, you're too sweet. I'm afraid I might take advantage of you. So that's the nice guy. The narcissistic man is the one that's good at allowing for the woman to feel desired, so good that he uses that as power over actually feeling sexually attracted physically to the opposite gender. Because one thing that you have to understand about narcissistic men is that they know which women they can go and prey on and which women you can't go and pursue after. They know which women are going to send some form of an amount of a harassment case sent against to them by the police and which women aren't. The nice guy doesn't know how to do that. We don't know how to decipher which women are going to do that and which women aren't. We could go into the attempt of trying to say, oh, well, this woman has a lower vibrational frequency or a higher vibrational frequency, And the lower ones are going to be the ones maybe we might be able to have a small micro chance with in terms of being able to acquire vagina. But at the same time, you still have that fucking risk of getting sent some form of an amount of a harassment case sent against to them by the police. The narcissistic man of society has been working their entire lives to learn how the sex drive works of the matriarch. We as the nice guy hasn't been doing that. All we've been doing is listening to what we've been told. Go and take a woman out on a date. $100, $200 dinner date. And hope to hell that maybe it could be a possibility that something might pop off between you all. And then she goes, 80% of the time, just walks off with a free dinner date. And that's what she gets. Whilst the narcissistic man is out here calling women they have a fat ass and that they're cute. And that's all they have to say to these women. And like I said before, they know which women, they can take a risk on and which women they can't take a risk on. They know. They've been doing this for years. And it's just the nice guy has no chance. We have no choice but to just opt out of the dating market. There's no sense in going into the attempt of trying to go and take a risk of getting sent some form of an amount of harassment case. Dates aren't going to freaking work because we're just going to get scammed in dating. And free food for the female. At least for the lower nature female at the current moment. The higher nature female is out thinking in their brains that what feminine energy should be considered as is power. And that's an entirely new story. And the higher nature female at the current moment, Gen X women, I can go on ahead and explain to you why it would be harder for you to be able to obtain vagina now, because Gen X women are out here, they're the ones that controls the rules of the dating market. They're the ones getting into the heads of, of age Gen Z women and millennial women. Gen X women are telling the younger generations of women to become strong and independent women that don't need no man. And Gen X women are telling younger generations of women, all men want is one thing. And if you are to go and date, only date up. Date millionaires and billionaires. That's what Gen X women at the current moment are saying to the younger generations of women. So it just seems, where you go out in your job and you see a Gen X woman talk to a younger woman, and the Gen X woman talking to the younger woman is like, well, all men want is one thing, and I don't think that, older men should be dating women of 18 years of age or 19 years of age. They should wait till they're 21 or 23, because then the older man's just going to take advantage of the younger woman. So it's been like that for a long while, where Gen X women have been controlling the rules of the dating market. You can tell off TikTok and YouTube of how these older women are giving younger women advice, and out in public and out in the workplace. So if you're out here trying to get a vagina, hey, well, that's where your vagina's going. That's where your vagina's at right there. Gen X women are in between baby boomer women and Gen Z women and millennial women. And Gen X women have been telling the younger generations of women, hey, take a look at the baby boomers. You know, because the baby boomers were the ones that did it correctly in terms of marriage and starting a family. You know, I would assume in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. And I'm not sure, you know, how well it was in the 1970s. I heard, you know, 1970s was just the crack era, so I don't know how good it was in terms of that in the 1970s. And they're like, you know, how the baby boomer women did it, that was slavery. Baby boomer women were slaves to baby boomer men in marriage. And so, you know, Gen X women telling millennial women and Gen Z women, well, don't become slaves to men and become strong and independent women. And even if you were to go and only date millionaires and billionaires, and men only want one thing, and you'll be taken advantage of by men. You'll be their sex slaves in marriage, and you'll cook and clean, and you don't want to do that. You want to become a strong and independent woman that don't need no man. So I'd have to most definitely blame Gen X to be the reasoning for the downfall of the dating market. And so that's a whole new ball game when we take a look at the female gender's higher nature power trip of them thinking in their brains that feminine energy should be considered as this power, that they don't actually need no man, that they can pay for themselves, and if they were to go on to date, then what they should do is to date up and only date their own vibrational frequency. That's what these higher nature females are on. Not to mention these women on TikTok and YouTube coming out and saying, oh, well, this energy ain't free, and men have to pay for conversations. So that's just them thinking in their brains that, like, not only what pussy should be considered as his power, but they also think what feminine energy should also be considered as his power. So you have lower nature females thinking in their brains pussy's power, and you have higher nature females thinking in their brains what feminine energy should be considered as his power. And then what we as the male gender should just do is just simp down and allow for the matriarch to just think in their brains that what they have is power over us, and we should just simp down. That's what the matriarch's thinking at the current moment. And they've been thinking this for a long while. You hear some cries of some women on TikTok and YouTube. I'm getting sick and tired of all this feminism crap and me being told I need to become a strong and independent woman, and it's hard out here, and I don't mind having a secondary person in my life. Well, the problem with that is that after men had already heard all this bullshit from women, it's like we know what women want compared to what women would be willing to settle for. So even if you did want to come into like a man's life and pay half his bills for him, you know, you guys just pay half the bills of a household, we as the male gender just knows in the background, well, it's not like she wants to be in a relationship with me. If she could find a man that could pay all the fucking bills, then She'd prefer that. She doesn't want to be in no damn relationship with me, while she would be in the relationship with him. Now, how are we supposed to feel knowing how women feel, and then go into a relationship with one knowing damn well that if when she does find a chance of becoming with a millionaire or billionaire, then she just go off with him? There's just no sense in going into the attempt of trying to date. I don't believe dating's for everyone. It's just really for real. Well, if you're a rich man, well then you're already freaking made. You probably started a business that makes millions of dollars, or at least $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, and you're rich. And so a woman's going to just automatically choose you. But if she feels she has no choice but to go and to date a poor man, well, first off, the female gender, a pattern that I've always seen with all women. Of course, if you're not 6 foot tall with muscles, then you're not going to get no girlfriend. That's just by default. If you're not 6 foot tall with muscles. Because the female gender wants to have their little egotistical power trip to think in their brains that what they have is their 6 foot tall beast with muscles, and they have their leash around their pet beast neck to become their own personal bodyguard. That's the reasoning as to why that if you're 6 foot tall with muscles, there's no chance. And that's how that works. So first, the female gender goes and chooses a 6 foot tall man with muscles, so they could go and say, well, I have a boyfriend, this is part of it right here. I can at least use him as my own personal bodyguard. The lower nature female goes into the attempt of trying to use vagina as power, as motivation, to check to see if she could get him to go and make him somehow no vagina unless you come back with money to pay me my bills, lavish lifestyle, beauty products, and expensive name brand items. The higher nature female, they think, oh, emotional investment, spare the man some of my feminine energy, and see if he'll come back with some money to pay for my bills, lavish lifestyle, beauty products, and expensive name brand items. So this is how the female gender works. And this is the difference between the lower nature female thinking in their brains that pussy's power compared to the higher nature female thinking in their brains that what feminine energy should be considered as is power. This is how the matriarch works. But the reasoning as to why that dating isn't for everyone is because it just takes a special kind of man to disrespect himself to go and to do all that simping down for a woman. To go and to take the risk of getting sent some form of an amount of a harassment case, and only if you get past that part without that happening to you, then you have to pay for the dinner date. You have to go and simp down and become the woman's bodyguard and pay for her living expenses and lavish lifestyle and beauty products. But the narcissistic man, they don't have to do all that stuff because they know how to activate the woman's nervous system so good that it bypasses the woman's want for the man to do all that stuff for her, that he gets a vagina for free. So he knows how to activate the dopamine hit by allowing for the woman to feel desired so good, which is the female gender's version of a sexual thought. That he doesn't have to be the one to go and pay for any vagina. It's free for him. It's not free for the nice guy that goes and be nice to the woman and does all that stuff for her. Not narcissistic man of society, and fat ass, and you're cute, and I just want to go and stick my dick inside your vagina and for us to feel good They know how to talk to women like that without getting sent some form of an amount of harassment case. We as the nice guy does not know how to do that. Considering the fact, especially since the female gender tells us to be the ones to pursue after them, that if we as the nice guy went into the attempt of trying to do what the narcissistic man does, what the narcissistic man does, that we would just completely fail and go to jail. That's what we do. Because we know damn well that if the female gender's version of a sexual thought is egoism, to think in their brains that what men should be is desperate, and just for them to feel desired, they're not going to be the ones to come up to us. Because for them to be the ones to come up to us and for them to tell us that they want to shove their vagina on our cocks, they're not going to do that. They would expect for us to be the ones to do that, but then we'd still be taking the risk of getting sent some form of an amount of a harassment case. Doing that. Talking about pursue. That's what I'm saying. It's just, with law enforcement as a factor, which I'm not saying that it shouldn't be a factor, because unfortunately you have a crap ton of men that make it to where there's just a terrible image where some men will go and rape. So law enforcement is needed. I think rapists put a terrible fucking image on us men that, oh, that's what all of us are going to freaking do, and women are scared of us. But then you go and you take a look at that and the understanding of women not wanting to do that, and they think what we should be the one to do is that, which is what the narcissistic man successfully is able to do with women. And it's like, well, I'm starting to think, because like when my mother told me, oh, women are shy and that's why they don't want to come up to men. But then you go and you take a look, well, the female gender's version of a sexual thought is egoism, to think in their brains what men should be is desperate. So maybe what we should do is to take a look at that reasoning as to why they don't want to be the ones to come up to us, to in accordance with how they'd most definitely perceive it, beg for a relationship or for sex. Because they think what we should be the ones is to be desperate for them, to desire them. And it has nothing to do with them being shy or scared to come up to us and afraid of rejection. Because you'd most definitely see a female manager at some business talk down to a male employee. And you'd wonder, well, they'd have no problem talking down to a male employee. I'm the boss. In any kind of business. So, if they can do that, then they'd most definitely be able to come up to a man and pursue us. But they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that not because they're scared or shy. They're not going to do that because the female gender's version of a sexual thought is to think what we should be the ones is desperate for them. But like I said before, because Gen X women, they're the ones that control the rules of the dating market, and they're telling the younger generations of women that men are perverts and creeps, and all we want is one thing. That kind of put a whole bunch of resentment in millennial women and Gen Z of age women against us men. That if we were to go into the attempt of trying to do what the narcissistic man does, that we just most definitely, there's a ginormous risk. And even, narcissistic men go and take that freaking risk of getting sent some form of an amount of a harassment case. But for the times that they are successful in not getting sent some form of an amount of a harassment case, man, you have some veterans out there. Like I said before, well, I haven't said this before, But I've said it to other people, this planet, like the narcissistic men's children, are going to be the ones to inherit this planet. That's what's going to happen. It's not going to be the nice guy's children. It's going to be the narcissistic man's children. That's how that's going to work.